House Florent, who hail from Brightwater Keep, is a noble house from the Reach, and one of the main houses sworn to House Tyrell of Highgarden. Their sigil is a red gold fox's head, encircled by blue flowers. Like many of the oldest houses in the Reach, they claim their descent from Garth Greenhand by his daughter Florent the Fox. She was said to be the cleverest of his many children. According to myth, she kept 3 husbands, each ignorant of the existence of the other 2. Her sons became the founders of House Florent, House Ball, and House Peak. In some tales of the Reach, Lan the Clever was a bastard born of Floris, or perhaps of her sister Roanne Goldentree. The sister changes depending on the house telling the story. Due to their close blood ties to the extinct kings of the Reach, House Gardener, they technically have a much better claim to Highgarden than its current lords, House Tyrell. During Aegon Targaryen's conquest of Westeros, House Florent followed their liege lords and kin, King Mern IX Gardener, in taking up arms against Aegon the Conqueror during the battle that became known as the Field of Fire. After the battle, when King Mern and his sons burned and the Gardener's line ended, Aegon named House Tyrell as Lord Paramount of the Reach, despite the Florents possessing a superior claim by their blood ties to the kings of the Reach. However, in truth, half the houses in the Reach had some kind of blood tie to House Gardener. House Florent was among the greatest houses of the Reach that bitterly complained about being made vassals of the Tyrells and insisted their blood was nobler than that of the up-jumped stewards. Their protests were denied again and again by King Aegon I, and once it became clear his decision was final, it was never heard again under any of his descendants. Perhaps because the Florents had fought House Targaryen when the Tyrells did not, is why they were not given Highgarden. During the regency period of King Aegon III, after the Dance of the Dragons in 133 AC, Lord Unwin Peak, who was the king's hand and protector of the realm, sought to make his daughter Marielle the queen to King Aegon III, leading to the Maiden Days Ball, intended for the king to choose his new bride. Lady Samantha Hightower nominated maidens from House Florent, among other noble houses, as potential queen consort for the king. Later, in 206 AC, during the reign of Daeron II Targaryen, Sir Arlan of Pennytree and his squire Duncan, later Sir Duncan the Tall, were in service to a Lord Florent for a while, who was said to be blind. The Florent arms were spotted by Sir Duncan in the assembled heraldry at the tourney at Ashford Meadows 3 years later, where Sir Alador Florent, heir to Brightwater Keep, and Sir John Florent were listed on the rolls of the tourney. During the Baratheon era of Westeros, Selyse Florent, a member of House Florent, is married to Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Dragonstone, and the brother to King Robert I Baratheon. It is said that her cousin, Delena Florent, was despoiled by the king during the wedding feast of Selyse and Stannis, something that both House Florent and Stannis took as a great insult. Lord Tywin Lannister offered his dwarf son Tyrion for marriage to Delena, but her father, Sir Colin Florent, instead married her to one of his knights, Hosmund Norcross. Delena gave birth to a boy named Edric Storm, who grew up at Storm's End under the care of Renly Baratheon. Sir Exel Florent, the brother of Lord Alistair Florent of Brightwater Keep, serves Stannis as Castellan of Dragonstone after the War of Five Kings begins. During the second A Song of Ice and Fire novel, A Clash of Kings, Melisandre, the Red Priestess, has joined the court of Stannis Baratheon on Dragonstone, with Lady Selyse Florent fervently taking up the worship of Rhaelor, the Lord of Light. With this attention from Selyse, raising Melisandre's position greatly. Once the War of Five Kings breaks out in earnest, and Stannis is seen by many as the rightful king of Westeros, Selyse Florent becomes Stannis' queen. However, the support of House Florent to Stannis' cause was far from given, with the main branch of House Florent following their liege lords of House Tyrell in support for the late King Robert Baratheon's youngest brother, Renly, Lord of Storm's End, who had also crowned himself king. The Florents fielded roughly 2,000 men and was seen as a huge loss for Stannis. Upon Renly Baratheon's death at Storm's End, the Florents are the first and most powerful of the Reach houses to then defect to Stannis, rather than follow House Tyrell into its new alliance with House Lannister. Selyse's uncle, Lord Alistair Florent, begins following Rhaelor as a religion begins to take hold a lot deeper across Stannis' camp following the death of Renly. Alistair's nephew, Sir Erin, is one of the knights Stannis sends to recruit Renly's infantry at Bitterbridge, but they do not return. Alistair's son-in-law, Lord Randall Tarley, puts many Florent men-at-arms to death when he seizes Renly's stores to ensure they do not go over to Stannis' side. Lord Alistair is with Stannis during the parley with Sir Courtney Penrose, who refuses to yield Storm's End or his ward, Edric Storm, the bastard son of Delaena Florent and King Robert Baratheon. Edric is later sent to Dragonstone after Courtney's death and the fall of Storm's End. Selyse's brother, Sir Imry Florent, is given command of Stannis' royal fleet in the Battle of the Blackwater. He relies on the size of his fleet and does not send scouts ahead. Almost his entire force is trapped in the Blackwater Rush by Tyrion Lannister's defensive chain and is destroyed by wildfire. He dies on Fury along with most of his men. Despite the spirited defences of King's Landing, Stannis' army seems within sight of victory. However, the Florent's rivals, the Tyrells, arrive with Lord Tywin Lannister from the south of the Blackwater and rout Stannis' men. During the third book, A Storm of Swords, most of Stannis' men were rescued from the shorelines of the Lyseni fleet of Salador San, where badges of Brightwater Keep and House Florent, and by the time they are regrouping on Dragonstone, it is estimated more than half of Stannis' men are Florents, with Lord Alistair Florent becoming his Hand of the King. The war with House Tyrell brings up the old issues of Highgarden. Lord Tywin, the Hand of the King for Joffrey I Baratheon, dispossesses the Florents of their holdings and awards them to Sir Garland Tyrell, the second son of Mace Tyrell, Lord Paramount of the Reach, as a reward for loyal service, forming House Tyrell of Brightwater Keep, thus technically making House Florent landless. When Alistair plots to wed Stannis' daughter, Princess Shireen Baratheon, to Joffrey's brother, Prince Tommen Baratheon, in an effort to make peace without Stannis' knowledge, he is thrown in the dungeons. Axel counsels Stannis to put Claw Isle to the torch in retaliation for Lord Arden Kautegar bending the knee, but Stannis dismisses the idea, agreeing with Davos that this is an evil notion, and thus Davos becomes Alistair's successor as Hand of the King. Davos arranges for Edric Storm to be sent to Lys to avoid being burned alive by Melisandre. Later in the story, after Stannis' eyes turn north during the battle beneath the wall, Jon Snow spots a ring of flowers amongst the banners when Stannis' hosts attack the Free Folk camp. The banners of House Florent are later spotted flying at Castle Black as well by Samwell Tarly. During the fifth book, A Dance with Dragons, Lord Davos Seaworth recalls that when Stannis Baratheon sailed for the wall, Melisandre burned Lord Alistair Florent alive to obtain favourable winds for the voyage. Once Stannis arrived in the north, he left Sir Axel Florent with Queen Selyse Florent and some fellow men-at-arms at Eastwatch by the Sea. Axel at this point begins calling himself the Queen's Hand, behind Stannis' back. Selyse and Axel later stop at Castle Black on their way to the Night Fort. Axel hopes to meet the beautiful Val, a wildling princess, who is staying at Castle Black under the protection of the Night's Watch. While at Castle Black, the Queen arranges many marriages between her men and the men of the Free Folk, betrothing Axel to the eldest daughter of Gerrick Kingsblood. As of the end of A Dance with Dragons, that is all we know of House Florent for now.